Well, today we come to the fourth of the spiritual blessings in heavenly places that God bestows upon those who He has chosen and who has pre-planned their sanctification and has forgiven them for their sins and shown them His wondrous grace, His empowerment to serve and to follow after Him. And the fourth thing that we come to is He says, in terms of the riches of God's grace, that He lavished on us all wisdom and understanding. Now, wisdom and understanding are things that everybody wants, because to be able to be wise is to be able to foresee the future, not necessarily prophetically, but to have an understanding of how things work so clearly that you're able to make judicious decisions at critical points. And I mean, for example, I know that I will reap whatever I sow. If I sow to the flesh, it's going to produce corruption. If I sow to the Spirit, it's going to reap things that are eternal, everlasting. And so the wisdom is in knowing that dynamic, so that when I'm looking at a situation that is really contrary to God's will, then I can very clearly sit back and go, wait a minute, this can't work out well. This can't lead to anything good. This will always bring me sadness or sorrow or harm. And that's what wisdom is. It's that ability to foresee the decisions that are ahead of us and to make really in our mind, be settled in our mind before we even encounter them, what is the right path, the safe path. And that can be very confusing in life. So I often tell people, if you're not sure what you're supposed to do, then wait upon the Lord. And they say, but what if I have to make a decision right away? Then I say, then what you do is you say, Lord, please guide me, help me to make the right choice, and then step out in faith. Because even that is an explanation to God that I don't yet know what is the best choice, but I trust in you and I need for you to make the best choice for me. So I'm going to step out in faith. Now, people are saying, well, what if I step out in faith and I make the wrong decision? This is where I think the grace of God really shows itself. I mean, I believe that God can take your bad decision and suddenly transform it into a right decision. God just has that capacity. The creator of the universe has a way to rewire the moments of your life so that they become something that's blessed or joyous. But the one thing that will short circuit that rewiring is when we have willful disobedience. And that's the most dangerous place to come when we sit back and go, I know it's wrong. I know it's God says I shouldn't, but I'm going to do it anyway because this is what I want to do. You are setting yourself up for some painful consequences. And they may not come immediately. They may take time to develop. But I guarantee you, eventually, you'll find yourself ruining the day that you came to that attitude. Willful and even habitual disobedience is the one thing that will not only keep the grace of God from flowing in and through your life, but it'll make you stupid. That's a saying I came up many years ago with, that sin makes you stupid. What wisdom does is it makes you smart. And wisdom recognizes that sin is always destructive. And so I never want to purposely or willingly engage in a sinful, rebellious act against God. And that's where the second part, he says he gives us wisdom and understanding. Understanding is the idea to have a right perspective. We often say it means to really stand under what's going on in other people's lives. In other words, you've probably talked to people or heard people tell you their story, and you've sat back and say, I don't really quite understand how you got to this place or how this circumstance developed. And I find in counseling, this is constantly a thing I have to deal with. I pray before I counsel with people, Lord, give me wisdom and give me understanding. So help me to listen, really have a sharp ear to listen to what people are saying so that I can get a clear sense before I speak. That's the problem for many of us, as we talked about previously in the book of James, that he said, be slow to speak and quick to hear, and then he said slow to anger. We oftentimes engage our mouths with our advice or our instructions or whatever long before we have the whole picture. In fact, in Proverbs, Solomon said, a fool speaks before he hears the whole matter. So one of the things that God graciously begins to develop in us is not only a clear sense of what is the wise as opposed to what is foolish, but also to be able to be patient enough to hear people out and not to be quick to jump to conclusions, that we don't just react to situations, but we calmly sit back and go, wait a minute, okay, what is it that I'm supposed to do? Now, I'm not saying that if you take your time, pray, and you wait on a decision, that the reaction from others is always going to be positive. In fact, I've even had recently, one reaction was pretty dang negative. And what I find is that people always want to put their sin on you. That's what people do. They don't want to, they can't bear their own sin, and they don't want to face their own sin, so they take their sin and they try to put on somebody else to carry so that they feel like it's not their own. It's really a gift of triangulation, where they begin to, when they're guilty of something, they shift the blame to someone else and say, no, they're the ones who did it. They're the bad party. I remember once I caught a gentleman really cheating us, the church, on a financial matter. And I said, we found out this thing here. This doesn't make sense. Doesn't add up. The numbers are all wrong. And he had the audacity to look me right in the eye and say, oh no, you didn't find that, we found that, and we told you where you made the mistake, not you telling us. And I just sat there just amazed, stupefied, because here he was trying to convince me that he was the good guy and I was the dumb guy, when in fact he was just dishonest. Well, you're going to encounter those kind of sociopathic personalities as you go through life, so don't let it drive you crazy. Just move on. Don't spend a lot of time trying to figure that out. Basically, there are some people who will lie, cheat, and steal to do whatever they can to get what they want, to get ahead. Understanding is this thing where we sit back and we take the time to figure out what's being said, what's being communicated, and deciding if it's true. I mean, when I watch TV commercials and I see that if I buy a pillow, it's going to change my life. I wish that was true. I tried one of those pillows. I didn't buy it, but I tried one and I found it was a pillow, And there's all these things that people are buying with all these promises, how they're just going to rejuvenate your life. The truth of the matter is, the only people who are having their life impacted in a positive way are the people who are collecting the money that you're sending them to buy their products that really have limited value. I'm not saying there's no value to them, but they're limited values. But at the end of the day, we begin to develop a wisdom in life. After we've made mistakes in the past, we begin to realize, okay, that doesn't work. And we take our time to listen and consider what's there. And that depth of insight, I mean, not just ordinary life experience insight, but a depth of insight to really understand very deep and complex and spiritually based issues, is something that God grants to you. Because one of the things I came to realize even recently, that in dealing with a conflict situation, I wasn't dealing with that person. I was dealing with a spirit that is operating through that person, that has free access to the thoughts and the attitudes and the actions of that person. And I began to rebuke and resist that demonic spirit. And that's the kind of wisdom that God often gives us, because sometimes the real issue lies way beyond even the ability of the person you're struggling with. It has everything to do with the spirit that they have been taken captive by to do his will. They don't necessarily have to be demon-possessed, but they are demonically controlled. So, I don't know how I got all the way over here, but we'll pick this up tomorrow. So thank you for patiently listening to me. God bless you and go in his grace.